All right, folks, this is going to be a doozy, so I really want you to pay attention here to adjustment layers. Not only do we have to talk about what adjustment layers are, but every single adjustment layer is fairly complicated. So I just want to focus on one or two different adjustment layers that I use, okay? So let's talk about what are adjustment layers. It used to be, let's say, for example, if you wanted to change the things like saturation or the contrast or things like that, you would have to go up here to Image, Adjustments, and get one of these guys up here. So let's say, for example, you want to play with the hue and the saturation. So you would click Hue and Saturation, and you would go over here and get this little window, and you could play with the hue and saturation. So basically adding more saturation, making the image lighter, making it darker, changing the color balance so that, you know, all of the colors shift, or making everything, you know, one color. You could just kind of like do all these different effects. I don't really use this that much. There's about a million ways to do the same thing. I don't really use the hue and saturation thing, except for to desaturate sometimes. Anyway, but once you finished with this guy, and you said, okay, forever and ever and ever, those changes would be there. You would never be able to change them again, okay? You can't go back and say, oh, well, that looks terrible. Let me go back again. So let me hit Control, Alt, Z, and I'll go back to that. So what happened? Many years later, they developed this thing called adjustment layers, and adjustment layers sit right here. I don't know why they're so small. All these things are so powerful, and they're just like tiny. If you just started Photoshop, you would never be able to find these. So let's go down to the adjustment layers and see what happens. I'm going to click on this, and we're going to go up, and you're going to find hue and saturation right here. It's the same thing, except now when I click on it, a layer pops up. Now what is this layer? Now, all of that information is going to sit on this layer, and it's going to affect all the things below it. So let me do the same thing I was doing below. Okay, the saturation goes up, goes down, the lightness. Did you notice something about that when I do that? Not only is it affecting the girl, but it's affecting this. Why? Because it's sitting on top of it. So everything that this is sitting on top of is going to be changed. So it's going to also change the text. Look at that. The text is like a green now. And this is insanely powerful. Now, what's something else you notice over here? It's got a layer mask. Isn't that awesome? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click. This is something I'll show later when I'm doing selections, but I'm going to click Control on this picture. And now I'm going to be able to, I'm going to hit, I'm going to fill that with black, and then I'm going to, sorry about that. I'm not used to explaining this. I'm going to create a alpha channel in here so it just affects the girl. So now when I click on this again, look at that. It's not affecting this at all. Okay? And you can even take this and make the opacity go down. And you can even do crazy stuff like multiplying this effect on top of it. I mean, it's insane. I don't ever use this stuff, but I mean, there's just an unlimited number of ways that you can kind of manipulate an image, you know. And people, that's why you watch tutorials, just to find out why. You know, you're never going to know everything in Photoshop because somebody's going to come up with a cool way to do everything. Now, I want to, you know, for the sake of time, I'm going to drag this down to the trash can. And I'm going to hit Control D, so that'll deselect everything. I'm sorry if this is kind of fast, but it's one of the more complicated things. It's something that requires a little bit of practice and just doing it on your own. So go down to adjustment layers again. I want to show you the most important adjustment layer that you need to know, okay? More important than almost anything, and that is curves. Curves is the big daddy. It's the big daddy cane of adjustment layers, okay? Now, why is curves so important? Because you can do so much with it. Curves adjusts the color information. on your image, okay? So let's say, for example, I want to make this more contrasty. Well, you could be a cheater and you could go to the contrast thing over here, the contrast option, and just boost it. But that's not going to give you a lot of flexibility. So what's going on over here? This is a representation of dark to light, okay? If you go straight here, it's black to white. So if I move this up, that means our blacks are going to get lighter. And if I put it here, our blacks are going to get darker, okay? I know that's kind of complicated, but just bear with me. Now, it's the same thing on here. Our lights, if you go down here, our lights are going to get darker, and your lights are going to get, blown out if you do that. Now, if you want to do a contrast, adjust the contrast, what you want to do is boost the dark and then boost the light, and you're going to get a more and more contrasty image. But the difference between this and just the simple hitting contrast is the level of adjustment. So you can get in there and really adjust exactly where, how bright you want things to get. Now let me talk about something else that's absolutely key with these. Not only can you adjust the light to darken the whole image, but you can pick the RGB values and how those individual colors will be affected. So let's go to blue. One of the things that I love to do is boost my dark area, boost the blue part of my dark area, and then drag right here down below so that goes into the yellow area. And if you look at this image, you start to see, wait a second, this is actually looking pretty cool. I mean, at least to me. This is something that I do on almost every picture is I boost the dark value, the blue and the darks, and I take this down. And you're getting more of like an Instagram look now, okay? Now what if I go to red? I'm going to take the red and I'm going to raise that just a little bit. And now you're starting to get this cool vintage look. And this is something that I do all the time. And I just want to show you this because this is really kind of advanced. But I want to show you how easy this stuff is further down the line, okay? So now we can take that. We've got this curves layer, and we can take it off, put it back on, and then we can do that again. We can even take it down and copy it, and it's going to be double. We have two of these now. And then you can take this and you can add, for example, let's see, what are we going to do? There's another one called the channel mixer that I use a lot. So we have a channel mixer, and we can take all of the, we can start messing with that, and that's going to affect the image as well. I don't care that much about the channel mixer. I don't care about you. But I hope that I've given you an explanation of basically what adjustment layers can do. If you just want to do something simple, let me shift click these two. And I'm going to go and I'm just going to click the, not hue saturation, brightness contrast. If you just want something, a really simple way to increase the contrast, just go to the brightness contrast and go up with it. See? But that's kind of boring. All right. Well, for the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving, but I hope you have a good idea now of what adjustment layers are. When you start working with pictures, if you're doing posters or you're dealing with, really intense pictures, one of the final stages is going to be adding adjustment layers to the top and really fine-tuning your image.